Thank you. I'm Mara Gross. I'm the Policy Director at Coalition for a Livable Future, a partnership of over 100 diverse organizations and hundreds of individuals. We've worked with Metro for almost 15 years to support both the human and natural communities. We support the three overarching principles in the COO recommendation and commend Metro for the hard work and thoughtful approach to that. We would like to see one additional principle, and that's related to climate change, to bring it up to that level, both in terms of mitigation and reducing greenhouse gases, and also adaptation for preparing for the coming changes that we know are going to come. Regionally, those include those range from things like water supply to air hotspots that impact seniors and other vulnerable communities. The recommendations in both the COO report and the goals in the RTP are strong, but we're concerned that there isn't the accountability to actually meet those goals. On the reserve side, there's the 34,000 acres that I know people have heard a lot about in Washington County, the cost that it will take to build out those areas, the impact to farm and forest lands, equity issues, affordability issues. And on the RTP side, while we've gone a long way, the projects are still too focused on roads, particularly too focused on road expansions. 2/3 of all RTP road dollars, and that's not including the Columbia River crossing, whose size is so large it distorts the other numbers. So 2/3, not including the CRC, are going to enlarge the footprint of the roads for cars. We can't create healthy communities that way. We can't meet our greenhouse gas goals that way. And we can't support vibrant neighborhoods that way. There's a chart that Metro recently put out showing that greenhouse gas emissions are getting worse under the RTP plan, and they're getting even worse than doing nothing. We can spend $14 to $20 billion and make things worse, is what our plans are saying we're doing. And so I want to ask you, how do we address these issues on a regional level? Because there's the individual jurisdictions that submit their projects, but what's the combination of tools, the carrots and the sticks that we can use? Can we use performance measures to determine what projects to fund? Can we use a process like with regional flexible funds to help determine what projects we fund? And I look forward to working with you to figuring that out.
Thank you. Councillor Collette?
Thank you. I really want to commend you for this analysis of the RTP. Several months ago, Mara and I and Jill Fugilister, also from CLF, sat down and we talked about how do we get equity into the RTP. And I said, well, take a look at it and tell me. And then, of course, this was before I had actually seen the full RTP or read it, and realizing that it's like 1,000 projects. And I am very impressed that you went through and gave projects, you clustered them, you gave them thumbs up, thumbs down from an equity, and I'm guessing environmental perspective.
Multiple perspectives, yeah.
And I appreciate the work. I know how much work it was. You guys don't make a lot of money, so it's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Councillor Harrington?
I appreciate the fact that you can only articulate so much in a 2-minute time period, and that your letter outlines more facts related to your conclusions, such as what you mentioned verbally was that 2/3 of the RTP dollars are directed at road projects, and then you give us some data on the projects in Washington County, Clackamas County, and then one of the cities, Happy Valley. What kind of comparative numbers might you want to communicate to? I mean, the road planners in each of these jurisdictions are merely responding to a need as they understand it, right? So there's really two questions in this. The first question is, well, and let me get both of them out first. If the need for roads is there because the roads were originally put in for rural levels of traffic and now we have urban levels of traffic, then what's wrong with addressing that need if clearly the need is there? Another way I think to get at that same question is, I see your data here on what the mix is. Mm-hmm. You're trying to give us an analysis of what it is. Mm-hmm. What kind of mix would you prefer to see?
To your first question about the need for roads, there's certainly some needs in terms of the roads, particularly around connectivity in centers. And I think it's a question and significant part of priorities, that while roads serve some needs, more capacity for cars serves some needs, first of all, they're very expensive, and it doesn't leave much money for other needs, much money to increase our transportation choices, much money to connect housing to transit, to invest in transit, bike, ped. So there are all sorts of needs, and roads expansion is only one of them. The second is that by increasing road capacity, it's decreasing choice in how we travel, and it leads to these other negative impacts. It leads to pressure to expand the urban growth boundary, and it leads to air toxic hotspots and increased global warming, and so it leads to all sorts of negative impacts. So I am hopeful that while there are real issues on the roads, that we can find more creative ways to address those issues than simply by expanding the roads.
Well, please, I hope you won't misunderstand me, because I do appreciate the work that you've put in here. But as I have met with our staff to better understand where the challenges that the communities are facing and what the RTP response has been, I understand that a lot of these new roads and road extensions, as you note them in your bullet on page 3 for Washington County, are in fact the road extensions to put in the very grid that we've been asking them to do for connectivity for years and years and years. And putting in the facilities that meet our goals for complete communities. So I'm having a very difficult time getting a better understanding of what you characterize as the good versus the not so good. So and I'm sorry to do this in a very limited time. I guess perhaps we should just sit down and try to figure it out, because I don't want the transportation planners out in my district to get discouraged, because they've put in a lot of hard work, and I understand from staff it's all to try and reach these goals. So
can I just to respond briefly on that? I think part of the difficulty, there are two things. One is that there is difficulty in looking at the project list and having an understanding of which projects do that, right? As I mentioned last week in Happy Valley, the descriptions are one line long, and they're not enough to tell the public what the projects really do. And so I'm sure there are some that do that, and it's hard to make those distinctions. Secondly, there are some that we see that are very large roads. We're talking about 7-lane arterials, and I think there are very few circumstances under which 7-lane arterials help create a complete grid. There are 2 of them in Hillsborough. There's one of them that Washington County is putting forward. The Tualatin Valley Highway, the 185th Avenue expansion. 7 lanes is, I have a hard time believing that actually helps create a good grid. So there are examples like that seem sort of beyond the pale.